It's Thursday before a UFC pay-per-view, which is it's one of the most happy times you're gonna have. If we're being completely honest here, it's a really good fight card. It's a video from Mio on MMA, and let's get into this. Couple of housekeeping notes off the top. Trying a slightly new setup. No new hardware or anything like that. Just different positioning for the microphone shield. And it's probably a bad time to try that because my voice is feeling a little fried today. But let me know if you like it. We are talking about the Israel Adesanya Alex Pereira UFC 281 card, which from top to bottom is pretty damn stacked. Like straight up. We have ourselves a really, really good card here with two main event or two title fights at the top. We have a classic action fight below that. We do have a sad fight. We do have Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. And that has a tremendous amount of sadness potential to it, as does Claudio Puelles and Dan Hooker. By the way, why is Dan Hooker, Claudio Puelles on the main card? Because you got Aaron Blanchfield and Molly McCann, which has, whether you like it or not, exceptionally large title implications. And that feels like that should be a main card fight. It's the typical UFC does not do a good job with either flyweight division. And I would really like to see that stop. We got Andre Petroski versus Wellington Turman, a legitimate top grappler bout at 185. We have the return of Dominic Reyes. We have Mike Trezano versus So Choi, the Sting. That'll be a good fight. And a real banger between Julio Arce and Montel Jackson. As well as an interesting fight, but one that could potentially be kind of crappy between Carlos Ulberg and Nikolai Negumereanu. So, like, there's a lot on this card that is fantastic outside of the title fights. Now, last pay-per-view, I said was going to be fantastic, and we got the TJ Dillashaw stuff. So, disclaimer, it could also suck because we're in this weird limelight of MMA betting, MMA fights, crossroads, fighter poverty that is leading to people fighting with some considerable injuries. And that's really about it. Like we've seen Dillashaw, we've seen Derek Minner, we've seen guys come in and have. I don't want to say they have no intention of winning, but they have no way of winning. And in Minner's case, I actually think he had no intention of winning, because the problem with Minner is that I have not seen a good source that says he was injured coming into the fight, but is the only thing that explains the betting line movement. You have an injured knee, you're not a kicker, and you come out and throw 2 body kicks. If that's not your game plan, then your coach wanted you to lose, because your coach probably, given James Krause's reputation, moved it in. Speaking of James Krause, there's a solid feud going on MMA Twitter right now between Megan Anderson and his team, and James Krause's team. Jeff Molina has been one of the ones to go against it, which is a weird one because I like Jeff Molina. I relatively like Megan Anderson, so I don't really have a dog in this fight. The talk of like Megan being a bit of a gym bully and not necessarily preparing, and because she is around the way stated that part of her loss to Amanda Nunes had to do with a lack of preparation vis-a-vis the James Krause gym, which I tend to think is bollocks. I think you lost to Amanda Nunes because it's Amanda Nunes. And Megan Anderson has a lot of flaws as a fighter and was always like kind of like a ball of potential that never really came through. Admittedly, in a weight class that there isn't a lot of chances to come through. But that doesn't mean that the Krause gym did a good job. And the Krause gym is taking some offense to her veiled statements on that regard. Which, if I'm a James Krause fighter, I have bigger problems than Amanda Nunes saying my gym isn't very good, because your gym is the epicenter of this MMA gambling storyline, which probably will come to nothing, probably will come to absolutely nothing, but has bigger implications than whether the gym prepped Megan Anderson for a fight with Amanda Nunes in any remotely sense winning fashion. But anyways, let's get on to the fights. So at the top of the card, we obviously have Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira, and if you'll excuse me 1 second, I'm going to open up best fight odds because I didn't write down the fight the betting odds for this fight. UFC 281, please, thank you. I have the odds. I haven't even looked at who the underdogs are. I'm wondering if I picked any big underdogs here. We'll find out. I don't feel like I have, but we'll find out. So obviously with Pereira versus Adesanya, we have to talk about the previous two encounters they've had in kickboxing. Interesting note, according to Tapology, they are the same height and the same reach. I don't buy that. I think Pereira is the taller fighter. The reach is very similar, and I don't think the height and reach are defining aspects of this fight. But just to note that I don't really buy that they're both 6'4". We'll just put it that way. So we have the footage of the two kickboxing fights between the two. And in the first one, Pereira won a contested decision that a lot of people thought Izzy won. And I thought so too. I don't think it was a robbery or anything, but I do think Izzy won. In the second one, Izzy came out and was looking really, really good. First round was close enough. Second round, though, was Izzy really laying into Pereira having to even get a standing 8 count before knocking him out in the third. It's one of those ones where, like, I don't want to call it a lucky punch or anything like that, because we know Alex Pereira sets up his knockout strikes, particularly the left hook, but also things like the flying knee, exceptionally well. So it's not luck. But it was an indication that Izzy, despite the 0-2 record, probably is actually the better pure kickboxer in terms of a technical aspect here. And I want to say I'm going to be referring to Pereira as a lesser technician throughout this breakdown. I want to make that clear. That is a relative statement. That is not me saying that Alex Pereira is a bad kickboxer, because he is a phenomenal kickboxer. He will probably outstrike anyone in MMA, except for Izzy in the weight class. Let's put it this way, Armen Petrosyan looks like a good kickboxer in MMA. Mahmoud Muradov looks like a good striker in MMA. Alex Pereira is leagues above those guys. It's just that in this particular context, he is the lackluster technician. There is obviously a thought a lot of people have put out there of what happens if Izzy just goes MMA on him. If he tries to take him down, he tries to enforce a grappling game, he tries to, remind him this isn't kickboxing. I think that's unlikely for a couple of reasons. One, I don't really think Izzy's ego and pride will allow him to do that. I think he very much wants to outstrike and beat Pereira with a stand-up game. And additionally, I don't think it would be a good idea, because while I think I have an easy time accepting that Izzy is a more understanding wrestler, a better grappler than Pereira, he's been training MMA seriously for a notably longer time. We've seen him on the ground. He is legitimately fairly good. That Kelvin Gastelum fight always stands out. But I don't think he has the cardio to do that for 25 minutes. And I don't think he has the physicality to simply overwhelm Pereira, because Pereira is probably the stronger and more powerful fighter. I mean, we saw what that looks like with the Andreas Michailidis fight. Like, not that Michailidis and Israel Adesanya are the same guy, But it was the same thing. Like Michailidis goes out there, normally a striker, normally a bit of a brawler, normally a guy who gets done on the feet and maybe mixes in some grappling. He goes in there and he tries to just be a grappler against Pereira, and he gasses himself out. That is not what you do unless you are already equipped to do it. Unless you are a Marvin Vettori or Robert Whittaker, who still is more of a striker, but I think like actually has the grasp of being able to wrestle and grapple for that long without gassing. Derek Brunson, obvious example. But if you're predominantly a striker, you're going to be striking with Pereira. And the key is to utilize Pereira's flaws and survive his strengths. So let's get to that. Pereira, I think, actually is poorly structured for MMA striking vis-a-vis his pedigree. Because he utilizes a very high guard, fairly static, and clearly based around like having the big gloves. And with the small gloves, that's not going to work. And we have seen that. We saw at moments where Bruno Silva, for example, capitalized on that. He leaves his body reasonably open. His footwork is not nearly as good as Izzy's in the sense that I think Izzy can control the exchanges. He can force a clinch, for example, if he wants to. I think that's actually a big problem for Pereira going forward, is that like I think he's just a little bit too easy to clinch with. And in kickboxing, and so far in MMA, his clinch game is a little bit lazy. He doesn't hand fight all that well. He's vulnerable to strikes in the clinch on entry and on exit. He has the worst aspects of like kickboxing when it comes to translating to MMA. Like the idea that the clinch is not really a long-term offensive weapon, because of course in kickboxing, you are forced to break fairly early. It's not like Muay Thai. And the big gloves. And again, not having necessarily by kickboxing standards, great footwork, although probably still better footwork than most of the division in MMA. So we saw that Izzy in the first fight could find a home, or in the first fight and in the second fight in kickboxing, found a home for the jab, found a home for the jab to the body, found a home for some good kicks, punished Pereira's kicks fairly effectively. These are all things that lead towards like my leaning. No surprise, I'm picking Izzy. We'll get that out of the way. And I think that Izzy can mix in some MMA techniques to do well. I think he can hit like a trip takedown, or he can hit like a hip toss at some point. Just that thing, just to give Pereira more and more to think about and make this more than just a kickboxing match. But it is the kickboxing that he'll win on. Does that mean Pereira can't win this fight? Does that mean I can't see what a Pereira win looks like? Well, obviously not. We've seen Pereira knock out Izzy. He's an amazingly powerful guy with a great left hook that he can hit from different things. He's got a great jumping knee. He's got some spinning shots that I think actually will be way more effective in MMA because there's more to think about. There's less tells. There's more things he can possibly chain off of those spinning attacks. So those are all like ways to win this. Like Pereira by knockout is a very legitimate bet. Very legitimate assumption. Very legitimate prediction. But because of the clinch, because of the footwork, because of the option that he has to mix in MMA, because of the fact that he probably on a purely technical level beat Pereira in both kickboxing matches, I am taking Izzy Adesanya to win a decision here in a fantastic... Now, this fight could also end up being exceedingly boring, and Izzy has hinted exactly how that could happen. Low kick, jab, footwork, avoid long, prolonged pocket exchanges with Pereira. Take the win that way. I am hoping he does not fight that safe. But he might. He might. The Yoel Romero fight, the Jared Cannonier fight. Like There's a lot of examples of Izzy just not engaging with power and utilizing the fact that he has fast feet and solid footwork and good range tools to win the fight that way. So I'm hoping we get something more interconnected, more prolonged, more diverse. But he does have that just boring way to win on the table as well. So what are the betting odds on this fight? Righty. Pereira plus 185, minus 220 on Israel Adesanya. The biggest spread you're going to find is Betway has Izzy at a minus 225 to plus 175. So yeah, things are fairly tight, as they should be. I mean, this is technically in a very real way. This is like, Izzy Adesanya, fighting a guy who's beaten him twice. I am noting that Fight Bets does not have any bets on any odds for the women's strawweight title fight. Have I missed some news there? Tapology still has it. Not that I would really trust Wikipedia, but Wikipedia still has it. What about UFC 281 fight card on ESPN? What's the layout? They still have it. Why does Bets not have any fighting lines for that card, for that fight? I assume Carla Esparza, given the fact that she has been labeled quite often as the most beatable fighter in the UFC, or at least champion, the most beatable champion in the UFC, probably is a major underdog. Let's see what Tapology has to say. Yeah, Esparza's the favorite at minus 360, plus 280. 92% of Tapology are picking Zhang. Okay, I don't know what's going on with this fight. Okay. Let's roll. We'll roll through it. We'll get to it. So, obviously, with Carla Esparza, we're talking about a woman who is stunningly a two-time UFC strawweight champion. I say stunningly because she's someone who lacks the physicality that you would expect from a UFC champion. Is realistically atomweight size. Like, she fought at atomweight for much of her pre-UFC career. When it was available, she's just small for the weight class, and of course she won the title in exceedingly unconventional fashion with that terrible fight with Rose Namajunas, and the first time she won it through tough against Rose Namajunas. Ironically, she's just a woman that has 2 wins over Rose Namajunas, but we don't really respect his elite. That is kind of hilarious. Zhang is 3 inches taller. There is no reach edge. Apparently no reach edge. I disagree. There are some paths to victory for Carla. She could try to just make this really boring, like the Thug Rose 2 fight, where she just kind of denies Zhang exchanges. But I don't really know how feasible that is, because like that worked against Thug Rose, because Thug Rose herself was incredibly uncomfortable with exchanging. Zhang's not going to be. And then, of course, the other option is, of course, Carla is probably the best wrestler in women's MMA. Honestly, her entries are great. Her technical takedowns are spectacular. She shoots, she chain wrestles, she clinches well. She's a better striker than I think anyone really ever generally gives her credit for. But all of those options lead her into a range that Weili likes to fight at. And while Weili Zhang is not the technical fighter, really in any way, that Carla is, but particularly as a wrestler, Weili is a freak. Super strong, explosive, powerful. It's kind of like Jessica Andrade in the sense that, like, there's not necessarily the greatest high-end fight IQ, technical ability to her, but she's insane. Like, beating Joanna Jędrzejczyk twice, beating Jessica Andrade, arguably beating Rose Namajunas. Like, this woman is one of the best female fighters on the planet, and I don't see how Carla can make either option work. I really don't. I see Weili Zhang TKOing her either from top position on the ground. And that's the other thing, is that Carla, I've always thought that Carla actually has good cardio, but effectively she has bad cardio, because I think her way of fighting is incredibly physically taxing, especially if you're at a strength disadvantage. If you've ever tried wrestling somebody like a little bit larger than you, more athletic, more powerful, that gets exhausting real quick, trying to maintain top position and get takedowns. And that's the hurdle that Carla faces here, and has faced a number of times. And it's why she has gotten tired in a lot of fights, and why I think a 5-round fight also further helps Weili, because Weili has a great, is not just muscles, so to speak. Like, she's got her own legitimately great cardio and ability to push a high pace. So, yeah. Zhang by TKO. Don't know what the betting odds are. Best Bets doesn't seem to have them. And Tapology has betting odds that I cannot imagine are actually accurate. So, this is a weird one. This is a weird one right this second. It might be like some kind of weird internet thing. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. This fight has a weird energy to it. Like, there are on both sides. There are people who are like taking it as slander if you pick Michael Chandler to beat Poirier, and there are people on the Chandler side that legitimately believe he is the most interesting, most dangerous fight for Islam Makhachev, and I don't really understand it. I feel like there's a mythical version of Michael Chandler that exists in some people's heads and in their hearts, that he's amazing. Like, he is amazing. Like, I'm going to say a lot of nice things about Michael Chandler in this breakdown. But there is a weird thing that, like, this guy is 2-2 in the UFC. And his big win is Tony Ferguson, who is done. And Dan Hooker, who might be done. And he has losses to Charles Oliveira and to Justin Gaethje. Don't get me wrong, those are not bad losses. But, like, even in the Ferguson fight, he lost a round at this point to Tony Ferguson, and then knocked him out with like a random bullshit strike. This is a guy who's lost to Will Brooks. This is a guy who had some pretty unimpressive performances towards the end of his Bellator run, that has physical durability issues, both in terms of chin and just having his body in one piece. He's 36 years old. His fighting style always was based on a tremendous amount of physicality. I also have questions about Dustin Poirier. Poirier's only 33, but he has a lot more mileage on him. And someone broke a plate upstairs, I think. And he's been saying like the talk about 170 and sort of being like more focused on the hot sauce business and things away from the cage is good. Don't get me wrong, like prep that retirement. But it is making me wonder like how in the game Poirier is right now. Let's talk about the fight. We talked about the out of cage aspects. Let's talk about the fight itself. Chandler is a world-class wrestler. Let's get that out of the way first. He is a explosive striker, fast, has creativity. He'll pull things out, but he doesn't really. There's not a lot of like particularly great structure to his game. There's not a lot of particularly great adjustments on a fight-by-fight basis. And this is why he gets hurt as fights go on fairly easily. He doesn't necessarily recover. I mean, there is that Justin Gaethje fight where he definitely recovered, and the Ferguson fight. But like, you know, there are Bellator examples. There are examples in the UFC of him getting hurt and being unable to recover. And there is that with Poirier. Like, obviously, there's the Michael Johnson fight. There's the Conor McGregor fight. I guess you could even say of like Poirier just getting nuked by a hot strike, which Chandler is easily able to replicate because he is that kind of guy. He has that kind of physicality. But Poirier does have a way more well built and thought through game. His defense is, as a striker, is fairly active. It's pretty reasonable. His attack is more varied. He'll work things up. Like the Max Holloway fight is a example of just complete mastery of being able to make minute adjustments as the fight goes on to keep Holloway on the back foot. That's something that Chandler doesn't have in his repertoire. And as a grappler, I do actually think Poirier is the better one. Like, I think Poirier, if he ends up on bottom, can actually survive. I think if Poirier ends up on top of Chandler, Chandler is in significant trouble. I've never really trusted him to scramble off his back. And I don't really trust his cardio at this point either, because like he's 36 years old. Everything is kind of based on going a million miles an hour. Could he win round one and then come out in round two and look just gassed? That's on the table. Poirier does still have that annoying tendency to go for a guillotine choke as a form of takedown defense. That does worry me. Chandler's hard to submit, and he doesn't really have a neck. I am going to go with Poirier because it feels like Chandler is going for flash over substance now more than ever. And it means that the inherent structural flaws to his game are becoming more and more apparent. And I would think Poirier, a well-schooled, well-coached, has an excellent team behind him fighter, can make that happen, can exploit the gaps, the very glaring gaps in Chandler's game, both as a striker and a wrestler, to make this happen. I have Poirier by decision, although a TKO or a submit or a club and sub, very much on the cards. And let's see, what does the betting public think on the matter? Does this one not have odds either? What is going on here, Best Fight Odds? You're killing me. That's 2 fights they've not had odds for. Tapology. Minus 200 on Poirier, plus 170 on Chandler. That's wider than I thought it was going to be. But what are the actual Tapology pick numbers? I don't usually reference these, but I'm kind of intrigued. Poirier 76%. Okay. There's a lot of people who feel the way I do. That both makes me feel better and also makes me feel completely not special. Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. Let me be clear here. Prime versus Prime. I take Edgar 7 days a week, 3 times on Sunday. But no. Frankie Edgar at 41 years old, failing durability, failing speed, failing reaction time, 3 inches shorter than Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez by TKO. And I don't know. It feels like the wrong fight for a final fight for Frankie because he said that this is probably his retirement. I would have loved to see the Dominic Cruz idea that people have pitched around a lot. Would have been fantastic. Would have been phenomenal. Or you give him a shot against somebody who like is an up and coming stud, who can go places. Because like Gutierrez is not going to capitalize on this momentum. He's not the most exciting fighter in the world. He's more of a neutralizer than anything else. More of a counter fighter than anything else. And like he'll win and he'll look good, but like I don't think it launches him anywhere. It gives him some attention that he probably won't actually capitalize on. Like we're gonna be like, I don't know, a year down the road, And Chris Gutierrez is going to be the guy who beat Frankie Edgar because Frankie Edgar was old. And like even the most anti-Frankie fans, casual fans are going to think that. Like that's what I'm getting at. So I don't like the matchmaking really at all. And oddly enough, you can generally get Frankie Edgar for like plus 200 and Gutierrez for like minus 235. I don't know if I think that should be wider. The biggest discrepancy I'm seeing is minus 245 to plus 186 in favor of Gutierrez. I don't know. I guess there's not really a lot of reasons to trust Gutierrez, particularly. He's a guy who is on quite a roll, actually. Ryan McDonald, Geraldo De Freitas, Vince Morales had the draw with Cody Durden. That's aging quite well. Like Durden's actually a reasonably good fighter, even if he's racist is the word I'm looking for. Andre Ul, Felipe Colaros, Danan Bacharel. But the Danan Bacharel fight was like kind of cool. And I don't know. I still don't like it. Like, I'm probably never going to really love almost any fighter's last fight, retirement fight. Like, I'm just not going to. Because, like, I don't know. I don't know what you do with them. Because you put them in there with, like, some killer and they get, like, mauled. You're not going to feel good about that. You put them in there with a Legends fight. You're probably looking at something sad. And then, like, obviously, like, the legend that continues on from that has to have a last fight anyways. But I don't know. Like, this doesn't really tick any of the bells for me. Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. Tough one. Hooker has looked pretty bad recently. Puelles does look good, but it's against like a way lower watermark than Hooker. And it feels like we have like two possible outcomes here. Number one, Hooker is fried and done. He's taken too much out of his body through weight cutting. He's always been a guy who was kind of physically limited and just like really, really big. And he goes out there and Puelles, being the young, kind of fearless killer that he is, goes out there and just rips him apart. Catches him in like a knee bar or a choke or an arm bar. Like he's a master of leg locks. And there's a lot of leg to work with there on Hooker. Option number two, Hooker goes out there, shows that, you know what, I still got this, and there are levels to this, as like cheesy as that is. Goes out there, utilizes his reach, which is 2 inches, 2.5 inches, pardon me, 2.5 inches. He's 2 inches taller. Puelles is used to being the bigger guy, so actually, like even if Hooker isn't the same, isn't peak Hooker. Like, just the reach advantage could be interesting. And establishes his jab, establishes a low kick game, works to the body, does the things that made Dan Hooker, once upon a time, a title contender. And the question is, which of those happens? I'm going to go with Puelles to win by submission. I do really think Hooker is just kind of washed. That run down to 145 felt like all kinds of the wrong lessons. Like all the wrong lessons were taken from that. And to me, when a fighter is making a weight class change that doesn't make any sense, I went through this with Nate Maness last card. It suggests a crumbling lack of self-confidence and a failure to understand the prime problems facing you. And that's what I feel like is the stance with Hooker right now. And Puelles is the underdog. All right. Not much of one. Plus 134 is his biggest underdog status. That comes with a minus 172 for Hooker. It's closer most other places, about plus 120-ish. The reference here is plus 122, minus 142 in favor of Hooker. So it looks like people still have faith in Hooker. My first underdog pick, possibly of the day. We did have the oddity with those two fights earlier. But, yeah, I think I guess what I'm getting at is I'm kind of sadness hedging this one because, like, if Hooker comes out and wins, like, it's kind of a feel good moment. Like, it's always a feel good moment when a guy that you're a big fan of comes out and gets the job done. And if he loses, at least Puelos is like a new hotness. And I get to say I was on the Puelos bandwagon off the Hooker bandwagon at the right time. um, Hanato Moicano versus Brad Riddell. Really looking forward to this fight. Really looking forward to this fight. It's this weird. It's a weird one because you're talking like 4 inches of height difference, but somehow only a half inch of reach, which is bizarre. Moicano, a far taller fighter, 5'11". Riddell's 5'7", and that is really the thing that puts hesitance into me because Riddell is the exact kind of fighter that I think Moicano will struggle with if he was taller. Riddell has an amazing counter-striking game. He counters jabs and kicks exceptionally well. Fights off the back foot exceptionally well. Has a active guard, solid defensive game. I mean, he's a city kickboxing guy. And while I do think that there's a little bit too much love for city kickboxing in MMA circles, they are an excellent gym and they do take in they translate kickboxing fundamentals to MMA exceptionally well. And then with Riddell, you also have a dude who is a little tank. Like, he is not a guy that you're going to bully in the clinch and take down easily. He's got excellent takedown defense, just like in general. Who was it that he fought that I was really impressed with his takedown defense? Magomed Mustafayev. That was what it was. Magomed Mustafayev. Is coming off of 2 straight losses, but I mean, losing to Rafael Fiziev, no shame in that. Fiziev is like proving to be like a legitimate killer. And then Jalen Turner hasn't proven to be a legitimate killer, but like, dude is 6'3" with all the athletic prowess in the world. He's gonna be. Like, mark that in your calendars. Jalen Turner going to be a big deal at lightweight. Both like physically and in terms of accomplishment. Especially now that he's with Jason Perillo. So, what does Moicano have to bring to the table? Like, he is a better grappler, but I fail to see him applying it consistently. He's a longer fighter. He's not a bad striker by any means. Like, he has a good jab, but like, his jab is actually quite counterable. His kicks are quite counterable. And I mean, we saw that with RDA. His fight with RDA. RDA had like a field day with counters against Moicano. And I think the opportunities are there for Brad Riddell to do much the same. So I've been burned by Riddell because I picked him to beat Turner. I think I actually picked him to beat Fiziev too. And he burned me. And I'm nervous about that. And there was a hiccup in the recording process there. So I'm just going to reiterate. I have been burned by Riddell twice. I picked him against Fiziev. I picked him against Turner. I think I picked him against Fiziev, and I definitely picked him against Turner. And he failed me. He failed me hard. But I don't have a tremendous amount of faith in Moicano. And Riddell does seem like just to have a perfectly set up technical game, what he wants to do to beat Moicano. So I'm going with Riddle by decision. And wouldn't be surprised if the betting lines kind of end up all over the place on this fight. I see underdog and favorite odds for both men. Okay. Looks like the consensus has Riddell at about like a plus 103 underdog. The biggest underdog odds you can get from plus 105. And we have Turner at a minus 220 favorite status most places. Minus 223 is the reference. Widest gap that gets is like minus 127. And there is one site that you can get Moicano at underdog odds plus 100. If you feel like it. That has Riddell at minus 110. So there you go. Looks like another underdog I'm picking, but it's just a technical nightmare matchup for Renato Moicano. Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Spawn. Spawn's an inch taller, 4.5 inches in reach. Massive dude, but not a guy who is actually good at utilizing his reach. People can establish the pocket against him pretty easily. They can clinch with him pretty easily. He did beat Ion Cutelaba recently. I don't know if that's a big win because Cutelaba is like an ultimate get. This is like the ultimate get round robin between like Reyes, Spawn, Serkinov is in there, and Cutelaba. 205 is loaded with them. I've never really had faith in Spawn. Like, he has obviously the frame. He's huge. He has the athleticism. He's strong. He's explosive. Reasonably coordinated. Not necessarily even a bad striker or grappler, but like, I don't know. Nothing flows together. There's no good adaptations to Spawn's game. There's no. It never seems there's a great deal of fight understanding from him. And in Reyes' side, like since the John Jones fight, he has been transfixed by that John Jones loss. Like losing to Jan Blachowicz is not a problem. Losing to Yuri Prohaska is not a problem. But Reyes' talk between fights is just I can't believe that he's focused on the fighting game right now. He's living in the past. And it has me tremendously worried. Still, I have to take him. Like, I think he's the better athlete of the two. Like, Reyes is a top shelf athlete. We're talking a guy who probably has some like borderline NFL athleticism, like explosive, fast, coordinated, strong, powerful, and pretty well rounded. Like, he's a good striker. He's a good grappler. He's got a wrestling game. He had moments against Blachowicz, who went on to become a lightweight champion. He had moments against Prohaska, who is a UFC light heavyweight champion. And the best light heavyweight in the world right now. That's not Spawn. Like, this is the fight that, like, if Reyes loses, like, he's just done. Like, just pack your bags up and go. You got to get up for this one. You got to be ready. You got to look sharp. I'm hoping he does. I'm really hoping he does. Anyways, Reyes by TKO. Spawn is there to get hit. Reyes hits very, very hard. It's a hope pick. It's a hope pick. It does look like Reyes is coming in at the favorite pretty much everywhere. Anywhere from about minus 205 to minus 230. You can get Spawn for anything from about minus 170 or plus 175 to plus 185. Not a huge underdog. But on paper, this should be a really easy fight. It's just, I have no idea where Reyes' head is at. Aaron Blanchfield versus Molly McCann. This is a weird one just on paper because Blanchfield's got 6 inches of reach despite being the same height. That is confusing as shit. I'm going to say some nice things here because Molly McCann has a rabid fan base. Molly McCann hits hard. She's a creative striker. She has good cardio. She has great heart. She keeps trying. But she's not very good and not especially physical. And if you watch her fight with Jillian Robertson and watch her get kind of like effortlessly single-legged and then just get like straight up like dragged to the ground and put in bottom position by Robertson on the way to a rear naked choke loss. And then you look at her fight with Laura Procopio, who was able to cut the cage off, force her into the cage. And yes, it was hard to get her down, but was able to get her down fairly frequently and win a decision. Her only win in the UFC. And then you look at Aaron Blanchfield. It is really, really hard to pick meatball here. Could she win by like a flashy strike? Absolutely. Blanchfield has some defensive flaws as a striker, not a particularly great one. McCann does have sudden things, the spinning back fist, for example, that she likes to utilize. But I just can't help but think like Blanchfield forces her into a clinch, takes her down over and over again. And Molly does not have the physicality, the technique to scramble out bottom. Like, this is a massive step up. Like, this is the thing is like people have been calling for like Molly McCann's going to win a title bizarrely but it's like girl beat Jin Yoon Kim, Luana Carolina, who has like some interesting physical upside, but is a mess of a fighter, and like Handy Goldie, who is a compact like little powder keg, but isn't very good. And then like Diana Belbita, who is notoriously unphysical, Ariane Lipsky, who has no structure to her game, and Priscilla Cachoeira, who is really terrible. I understand that she was the second person ever to beat Cachoeira, but Luana Carolina and Jillian Robertson have done it since. And realistically, like this is the thing, like her biggest wins are like Lipsky and Kim, who have lost to Cachoeira. Cachoeira may legitimately be Molly McCann's biggest win. It's kind of an indictment. I know people don't really know Blanchfield tremendously. She did actually have like kind of a sad outing against JJ Aldrich, which she won with the standing guillotine last time out. But like Aldrich was finding some solutions for her. But like this is a girl who bullied Miranda Maverick. This is a girl who bullied Sarah Alpar, Brogan Walker, destroyed Victoria Leonardo. And the only loss she has is a split decision to Tracy Cortez, who is really, really good. And also beat Kay Hansen, not for nothing. Way better resume, way more structured skill set, way more physicality to apply that skill set. Blanchfield by decision just because she's not a huge finisher and McCann is pretty tough. Betting odds. I imagine. Okay, okay. A lot of people are with me. Blanchfield coming in at minus 365, plus 290 for Molly McCann. This gets as wide as minus 460 to plus 320. So yeah, it looks like I'm not alone on this, but like I imagine that there's going to be at least a segment of the fan base that just loves Molly McCann and thinks she's going to win a title that are going to be significantly let down by this fight. Andre Petroski versus Wellington Turman. Solid fight between two of the best grapplers at 185. They're the same height, relatively same reach. Petroski is actually a lot older than I thought he was. He's in his early 30s. And Turman is younger than I thought he was because he has a boatload of fights, but I think he's only 26 years old. That's, he's got 23 fights and is 26 years old. That's a lot of action. That's a lot of wear and tear. As far as the fight goes, neither of these guys are like anyone's idea of good strikers. Petroski's got some power and some explosiveness in his strikes, but striking is not really his way to win. And it's definitely not Wellington Turman's way either. So this is probably going to be decided on the ground in the grappling phases. Petroski coming off of that submission over Nick Maximov. Big moment, like legitimately. He's 3-0 in the UFC, but like Maximo is the high water mark. And it does feel like Turman has handled guys who are kind of Petroski, maybe not with the same level of physicality, but the same general technical game. Like Misha Serkinov, for example. Actually, looking at his record, he's 3-3, losing to Bruno Silva, Andrew Sanchez, and Carl Roberson. That suddenly has made me a lot more nervous. And like he did have a split decision with Sam Alvey. Which is not great. Not great. Although, in fairness, Sam Alvey is the master of the split decision. I still got to go with Wellington Turman. I think he's the better grappler of the two. I think something that really stands out is that Petrosky gets kind of gas happy. He legitimately, I think, overpaces himself for what his gas tank is. I don't necessarily think he has a bad gas tank, but like he'll do a lot of energy intensive stuff that drains that gas tank, and he'll get tired, and Turman should take over down the stretch and submit him. That's my thought, but I don't have a ton of faith in either guy. What is the fight odds for this one? Turman is the underdog at plus 170. That's as big as it gets. Petrosky can be found at anywhere from like minus 195 to minus 210. So yeah, it's a close fight. It should be a close fight. Neither guy has really proven themselves to be a reliable winner in the UFC. Well, Petrosky is 3-0, but Michael Gilmore and that Chinese guy he fought were not UFC caliber. And Maximo just got cut. So like the idea that even Maximo is UFC caliber has to be reevaluated. Ottman Zaitar versus Matt Frevola. Let me say right off the bat, I am cheering for Frevola, and it doesn't matter who I pick in this fight. If Frevola loses, I am going to be disappointed. Because Ottman Zaitar is the face of MMA fighters being associated with really, really negative and bad people. He is the king of being seen with despots, criminal masterminds, probably is under investigation for drug running, specifically cocaine. Zaitar is a seriously bad dude, and I don't mean that in the good way. Like, I mean outside the cage, he is a bad dude. But he is undefeated. Not over the highest like caliber people. He's beaten Timo Packalan and Kama Worthy in the UFC, who are both. I know Packalan is gone, and I'm pretty sure Kama Worthy is as well. They were not UFC caliber guys. And I'll be fair here. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Khabib or we're talking about anyone. Like, your pre-UFC record tends to be unimpressive. Still, his high water mark outside of the UFC was like Alejandro Martinez, who's 13-5 and has a very, very hard physical ceiling. And he took Ottman to the third round, where Ottman was actually starting to lose because he was getting tired. Ottman has bad cardio, but he is a hard hitter. He does have a fairly good pressure striking game. He's aggressive as shit. He's psychotic, honestly. And the big concern with Matt Frevola is that Matt Frevola did lose in 7 seconds to Terrence McKinney and in a minute to Polo Reyes as kind of the bookends of his UFC run. And he got hurt. Like, in his two probably best performances were the draw with Lando Venata and the decision win over the aforementioned Jalen Turner. And in both of those fights, he got hurt a ton and just managed to recover. He comes forward. He's very open to get hit. He's aggressive. He throws hard. When he wrestles, he's actually pretty good. Like, he is a pretty good grappler. Does have a Cerro Longo lineage, although I don't believe he's at the gym now. He's listed fighting out of Gracie, Tampa South. And that is an opening, because I don't think Zaitar is all that good of a grappler. He's hard to take down. Bases well. I'm really trying to convince myself to pick Frevola. I really am. I like Matt Frevola. I like the aggression he brings. I like the heart. I like the fact that he does actually kind of adapt and like make some smart adjustments over the course of a fight. But at the same time, he just seems incredibly physically limited and defensively liable. Also, this is the bulldozer versus the steamroller. That's someone knows the way to make a hook to a fight. I'm gonna go with a Zaitar to knock him out. That way, at least if a Zaitar wins, I have that going for me. And if Frivola wins, I don't care that I lost the pick because I'll feel good watching a Zaitar lose. There you go. What are the odds on this fight? Because Zaitar probably has. Okay, he is the favorite, minus 138. But it's about right. Plus 118 on Frivola. You can get Frivola at near even money odds, actually. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. So yeah, Zaitar is consistently the favorite, but not by much. So people aren't being blinded by his 13-0 record. That's good. Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Silvana Gomez Juarez. And when I was getting ready to break this fight down, I was getting ready to talk about how this was the old versus the young. And then I looked it up and actually realized Silvana Gomez Juarez is 37 and Karolina Kowalkiewicz is also 37 years old. They're the same age. It doesn't feel like it. Because it feels like Karolina's on the massive come down and like Gomez Juarez only recently made it to the UFC. There's nothing about Silvana Gomez Juarez to make you pick her in this fight. Knocking out Liang Na means nothing. She's got some power. She's got some striking ability. She's got some athleticism. But it's all things that Karolina Kowalkiewicz has beaten before. And she got tapped out by Lupi Godinez. No shame. But then she also got armbarred by Vanessa Demopoulos. She's 1-2 with 2 submission losses via armbar in the UFC. There is no reason to have faith in her. The problem is there's no reason to have any faith in Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who lost 5 in a row and then beat Felice Herrig, who herself was on a massive downturn. I'm going to go with Karolina because she is the better fighter. She is the better grappler. She's the better wrestler. She's the better clinch fighter. Hopefully she has enough defense not to just get absolutely clocked. Hopefully she can banish her demons, because it really does feel like after she got finished that she started really doubting herself. But like, I think she did move to American Top Team, finally went to a proper gym. Hopefully they can retool her a little bit. Still listed at a Shark Top Team in Lodz. I think she went to join Joanna Jędrzejczyk at ATT. I could be wrong. I'm going to pick her just because like there have been reasons in the past to pick Karolina Kowalkiewicz. There has never really been a reason to pick Silvana Gomez Juarez. And they're both coming in at a reference minus 110. So there you go. You can get Gomez Juarez at underdog odds, and you can't get Karolina at plus odds. So it does seem like people are feeling Karolina. But yeah, probably rear naked choke or something. Move on to the next fight, because this one has all kinds of sadness on it. Mike Trizano versus Sting Suwoo Choi. Trizano's stock in my eyes took a hit when he lost to Lucas Almeida, getting knocked out, because I'm still not a huge believer in Almeida. Like, Almeida lost to Daniel Zellhuber, and Daniel Zellhuber is not good, and it really has made me wonder about him. Whereas before, he was nothing to get excited about. He's a good jab, good volume guy, builds combinations nicely, can wrestle, can grapple, and is like 6 feet tall at featherweight. He's facing a reach disadvantage of 3.5 inches, which he is not super amazing at dealing with against Sting. I have my doubts about Sting because he, I think, is on a 2-fight losing streak, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, losing to Josh Kulibau and Alex Caceres. But they are both more threatening and more adaptive than Trizano is. So I got to go with Sting here, who is a powerful striker, lives up to the name, has good speed, explosive, creative, and I'm kind of having doubts about Trizano's durability. And Choi is hard to take down. Like, Choi is, I don't know if he is a judo guy, but like part of his stance always makes me think that like dude has done some judo in his life and has the hips to back that up and is hard to take down. So Sting by TKO, and it does look like he's generally the favorite. Minus 165 to plus 145. You can find him. What's the best odds you can find him at? Really is minus 163 is the best odds you can find him at. So yeah, it does look like it's, again, close. Should be two fighters that have a lot to prove, but it's there. Then we have absolute physical freak Montel Jackson taking on Julio Arce. I'm looking forward to this fight because I am waiting for Montel Jackson to have his star-making moment. And I'm also waiting for Julio Arce to have his star-making moment. Jackson has an immense wrestling pedigree. We're talking an Olympic tryout wrestling pedigree. He's 5'10", 3 inches taller, 5.5 inches of reach. He is massive for bantamweight. He is incredibly physically strong and gifted, which is what makes watching him so goddamn annoying. Because in a lot of ways, every fight of his is basically boils down to him having moments where he displays that he should be destroying the opponent in front of him, that he should be wrecking him, and then not doing it. And like getting careless and getting taken down by like JP buys and stuff. It's so frustrating. So frustrating. There's a lack of nuance to a striking game in terms of like actually a technical weakness where like he's open to being hit, but like being 5'10" and having the reach he does, it's hard to get there. But like Arce is a really good MMA boxer, MMA striker. Dude has great counter work. He lays traps. He has an effectively active defense. He has smooth footwork. He has the blend of volume and power. He's not just a slugger who is relying on his power. He's not just a leaf blower who's relying on just throwing 100 and 200 punches over the course of 15 minutes to get the decision. He can hurt you. He can hurt you and he can set things up. And I really think that the defensive issues that Jackson has and the fact that he's remarkably lackadaisical as a fighter is going to get him into trouble here. If you want a comparison fight, Julio Arce beat Dan Ige. Dan Ige is a powerful striker who is inconsistent in terms of application of his skills and pace, is strong, is fighting at featherweight, is probably not the athlete that Montel Jackson is. But he could not control Arce. He could not make Arce fight a stationary game. Arce was able to kind of dance around him, counter him, land shots, and I think he can do the same here. But it's also not going to surprise me if Montel Jackson comes out and rips him apart in the first minute of the fight because he's that kind of monster. Arce by decision is my pick. What are the betting odds? Montel Jackson minus 200 favorite, as high as minus 225, plus 170 for Arce. You can get him as that high as plus 175. That does seem correct. Montel Jackson seems like he should be so much more than he is. And it's not that he has losses that are disappointing. He's a 11-2 fighter. But it's that there were moments where he was not beating the crap out of Felipe Colaros. There were moments where he was not beating the crap out of JP Buys. And these are fighters that do not have the skills or the physicality to be giving him any trouble. Um, his biggest win, I guess, is Brian Kelleher, and he was impressive in that. He looked great. And the losses to Ricky Simone and Brett Johns are fine. They're perfectly fine. But I don't know. Just doesn't put it together. Watch as I pick against him, and this is the time he puts it together. And my poor boy Julio Arce gets detonated. Carlos Ulberg, Nikolai Negumereanu. I'm taking Ulberg to win this fight by decision because I see a lovely butterfly in the cocoon that is Ulberg's fighting. And I do not see that with Negumereanu. Negumereanu has a style that I don't think long-term is going to work. He's not particularly big at 205. He is kind of just a plodding, hard-nosed pressure fighter who is really willing to be dirty because he will eye poke and he will grab cages a lot. If you want to see a referee get a warning workout, go watch him versus Saparback Saparov. My God, he made Saparov look like a normal fighter because the foul count was like 50-50. Oh boy. He's not especially fast. He's not especially powerful. He's not especially great at footwork or at striking. He has a good clinch wrestling game if he gets you there. But like if you watch his fight with Alexa Kamar, you could see him struggle with Kamer just on like a physical level. You could see him lose to Saparback Safarov. He did beat Kennedy Njoku, and that is impressive. But that had more to do with the neuroses and weaknesses that are still present in Kennedy Njoku. And you could argue, okay, well, like Ulberg's biggest win is Tefan Nchukwu, who is super short. But that's the thing. Super short, pressure guy with power. What does that sound like? That sounds like Nikolai Negumereanu. I do want to see Ulberg gets punched in the face because he's so goddamn pretty. And this is the Tim Crater moment of like, he's prettier than me. I have to be able to fight better. You always cheer against the pretty boys. But and there's just like kind of like a little bit of a douche nozzle aura to Ulberg. But he's got good counter striking. He's got a good lead jab. He works kicks in. He's tall. He's long. Apparently has less reach than Negumereanu somehow, which I kind of get. Negumereanu does kind of have those like super long stretch Armstrong arms going on. But if Ulberg puts everything together, like he is a super interesting prospect. If Negumereanu puts everything together, he's just kind of a journeyman. So Ulberg to get the win, although he will probably let Negumereanu have the front foot because like he let Fabio Charant have the front foot. And that is what Negumereanu likes. Like if you look at Negumereanu's loss to Saparov, the key was put him on the back foot and he doesn't know what to do. Although Ihor Potero did that as well. And Negumereanu showed some surprising counters and calmness under pressure and just kind of let Ihor gas. There's that. I like Negumereanu. He's actually my simulator fighter comp, courtesy of Sonia, who wrote my bio and was like, you are totally Negumereanu, and that hurts my feelings deep inside because I don't grab the cage or gouge eyes nearly enough. But I get it. But yeah, Ulberg should win the fight. What are the betting odds? Final betting odds on the day. Not much difference here. Ulberg is the favorite, minus 132, out to as much as minus 152. And Negumereanu is anywhere from plus 106 to plus 125. So he is the favorite. So there you go. That is the fight card. I hope it's going to be a good one. I hope it's amazing. I hope no one falls apart during the fight. And You can check out my link tree in the description, either to the left, to the right, above, below, wherever it is. It has my Twitter, it has my Twitch, it has my Discord, and it has the various platforms for this, as well as my YouTube gaming channel, which you can check out. The Discord is really, really cool. We got an MMA simulator there. I really think if you enjoyed this podcast, you would enjoy the MMA simulator. I think it's right up your alley. So check it out. And yeah, what's coming up next for the UFC here? Got a fight night coming up. Oh God, Lewis versus Bivak. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Oh Lordy. I had to put my hands up in the mouth there. Oh, that is whoa, Kudalava's still in the UFC. Oh my God. Why is he fighting Kenny Nchukwu? Oh, Ricky Turcios versus Kevin Natividad. Oh, Vanessa Demopoulos versus Maria Oliveira. Oh, God. Oh, this fight card sucks ass. Oh, my God. It's really bad. It's really bad. I'm trying to find a bright spot. I'm trying to find it. Miles Johns is back. That's cool. I don't know why Miles Johns ever was supposedly cut. Didn't take a fight. Maybe he didn't get cut. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. But Miles Johns is back, fighting Vince Morales. Jack Della Maddalena is on the card. That's always fun. Natalie Silva's on the card, but she's against some newcomer. And I will say this. Muslim Salikov versus Andre Fiallo. That's worth getting excited about. But that's really about it. So I hope you enjoyed what was a particularly long episode of the Mio on MMA podcast, and come back next time, because I'll be back on Sunday with the recap of UFC 281.